A Kennedy Summer. The Kennedy compound has been the summer residence for over 105 Kennedy children, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren over the years. In the mid-1920s, Joseph P. Kennedy and his wife Rose, along with their children, began renting homes for the summer in Hyannis Port. And it wasn't until November of 1928 that the Kennedys purchased Malcolm Cottage. According to the book White House by the Sea, A Century of the Kennedys at Hyannis Port by Katie Story, she writes, "The house was white, simple. It sat on about 3 acres at the end of a short dead-end street, no longer than a long driveway. It looked out onto endless Nantucket Sound, immense and empty. Sitting on a stretch of sandy private beach at the edge of a property felt like being on a boat with no land in sight. There were no sounds of traffic, shops, or crowds, just waves lapping on the shore. The house faced south to take advantage of the cool summer breeze and warm winter sun. To the left, there was an old, craggy breakwater, made of granite links slicing through the water, the spine of the half-moon harbor protecting the lands from the waves, keeping the view peaceful, still unchanged. The view from the wraparound porch at 50 Marchant Avenue was one of the best on Cape Cod. The house was nice, but by no means the nicest in town. The exterior was shingles painted in stark white, not the weathered natural gray favored by most of the Cape. There was no fence, no elaborate landscaping surrounding it, nothing special about it really, at least not from the outside, other than the view. The house was built by a local, L. Frank Payne, who worked with his dad, Lucas K. Payne. Everyone in town knew the Payne men, who built sturdy homes that would last. Frank Payne built the house at the end of Marchant Avenue in 1904 for a local named Beulah Malcolm. Hyannis Port, a quiet neighborhood tucked into the curve of Cape Cod, is the kind of place where people named their second homes, which stayed in the family for generations. When the new house on Marchant Avenue was built, it was called Malcolm Cottage, until 1928, when Joseph P. Kennedy bought it and doubled its size. For the next century, it was simply the Big House. The area surrounding would soon become ground zero as the world-famous Kennedy compound, the summer playground for the Kennedys, from John and Jackie to Bob and Ethel and their kids, and other members of the Boston clan who would purchase adjoining homes nearby. The family would spend their time playing touch football on the backyard lawn, making lifelong friendships with the neighborhood kids, going down to the local hall where dances were held weekly, and not to mention golfing, sailing, and setting lobster traps were all a part of their weekly routine. On sunny days, groups would picnic at the breakwater while kids would drive off it. When the Kennedys purchased the big house, they made many expansions to it, including an addition on the east side, 3 new bedrooms upstairs, and a couple more rooms downstairs, plus a dazzling new sunroom. In the basement, Joe hired Radio Corporation of America to install the latest technology for a theater. Altogether, the setup could comfortably seat 40, and they hosted movie nights 3 or 4 times a week, inviting their staff and the kids' friends to join. And thanks to Joe's connections in the movie realm, they got movie reels earlier before they were released to the public. The golf course in the area had always been a fine one, and it was in the midst of a renovation that would turn it into a great and competitive one. Around the corner from the golf course was the West Beach Club that sat facing Nantucket Sound. It was a modest building with wood-paneled walls and wide, creaky floorboards. The private club served as a hangout for the local families that paid for a membership. The big event of the week was the Wednesday picnic. Wednesday because that's when most of the families gave their cooks the night off. In the summer of 1953, the newly engaged Jacqueline Bouvier and Jack Kennedy would be going to Hyannis Port for the weekend to celebrate their engagement with a party at the Hyannis Port Club. Jackie tried to make herself comfortable in Rose and Joe's home. Quiet and observant, she seemed to be soaking in the house. Jack smiled when she came downstairs, more dressed up than anyone else. "Where do you think you're going?" he teased her. Before she could say anything or change, Rose told him, "Oh, don't be mean to her, dear. She looks lovely." Rose liked Jackie right away. She would write in her diaries that Jackie rounded out Jack's character. Jackie was serious and thoughtful. Like Jack, she loved to read. And like Jack, she sometimes seemed far away in her own thoughts. But while he liked books about history and poetry, she loved art. She eased Jack's natural intensity and encouraged him to slow down a little, to enjoy things. With her hands clasped behind her back, Jackie leaned in to listen, studying the ways her life would be changing. The daughter of a wealthy stockbroker, Jackie spent her summers in the Hamptons and Newport, reading, taking ballet, or horseback riding. She wasn't rough and tumble like the Kennedys, but she was a good sport, as she got to know her new family. In her crisp, sleeveless button-up blouse and pleated khaki shorts, she tossed the football and gamely took a swing when Jack lightly tossed her a softball in the backyard. Cameras clicked in the background. One photographer said about Jackie, "She should be posing for color pictures." At the end of that week, the Kennedys and their friends piled into one of the family's sailboats to set off on a weekend trip up the coast of Maine. It was the last hurrah before the wedding, which was a media frenzy, solidifying the Kennedys' rising status. Not only did the family spend summers at Hyannis Port, but they also spent Thanksgiving there. There were always a few summer people who stayed through the November holiday, or families with kids who came back to celebrate together for the school break. Many of the summer homes weren't winterized, so the Thanksgiving families layered up together around their dining tables for one last meal before closing up their houses until Memorial Day. For the Kennedys, Thanksgiving Thursday, 1956, began like all the years before it. Thursday always started with a big breakfast of bacon, eggs, and waffles. Rose was up with the sun for the early mass, but the rest of the family usually took their time, eventually piling into cars, making their way to the mid-morning service. After church, they went out for a sail. Even though the water was so cold, a splash felt like a slap. After everyone was back on shore and cleaned up, they threw on old sweaters and skirts and heavy walking shoes before making their way over to the big house, where dinner started promptly at 1. There was no formal seating assignments except for Rose and Joe, who sat at opposite ends at the heads of a long mahogany dining table. That year, in 1956, Jack pulled his father away from the table into the sunroom. When they came back, their arms were around each other and they had matching grins. Jack had decided to run for president. They told the family. He'd do it in 1960. They wouldn't announce it publicly for a while, but the path to the White House was charted that night on the end of the dead-end street. On Election Day, it was there that they would find out that John F. Kennedy had been elected President of the United States. Before Jack himself knew he had won the election, he went to bed, and in the morning, Caroline's nanny told her to go in, wake your father up, and tell him, "Good morning, Mr. President." "Well now, is that right?" he said, looking over to Shaw in the doorway. "Am I in, Miss Shaw?" "Of course you are, Mr. President," the nanny told him. As the years went by, summers on the Cape would continue to make history, as it would be here for the next 100 years that the family would come to celebrate, bond, play, and grieve. Thank you so much for watching Cultured Elegance. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. And comment down below telling me your favorite fact or memory about the Kennedys.